Have you ever stood in the breakfast aisle at your local supermarket, looking at a pack of plump, juicy-looking breakfast sausages, thinking you're about to feed your family a wholesome, protein-packed meal? You toss it in the cart, take it home, throw it on the skillet, and watch it shrink to half its size while releasing a small ocean of gray, oily water. That habit you have of grabbing the same familiar brand every single week because it has a picture of a rustic farmhouse or a happy cartoon pig on the front, that is exactly how they catch you. You think you're buying real meat, but you are actually handing over your hard-earned money for something that is barely more pork than it is bleached wheat flour and chemically treated tap water. Nearly 60% of what you are putting on your plate is a highly engineered illusion designed to look, smell, and behave like actual food. If you stick around until the end of this investigation, you will know more than 90% of shoppers walking into a grocery store tomorrow. I am going to show you exactly how the corporate food industry legally tricks you into buying filler instead of nutrition. We will break down the specific chemical additives designed to mask gray, rotting grade meat into looking perfectly pink. And you'll find out why a massive health organization officially classifies that morning link in the exact same carcinogen hazard category as tobacco. Most importantly, near the very end, we are going to look at one incredibly famous, massive American brand that splits the entire country completely down the middle. A brand you almost certainly have sitting in your freezer right now that might be doing something very sneaky behind your back. But before we name the worst offenders sitting on the shelves of Walmart, Target, and your local regional grocer, we need to talk about the basic structural anatomy of a modern commercial sausage. Historically, a sausage was a beautiful thing. You took good trimmings of muscle meat, some natural fat for moisture, a handful of spices, and stuffed it into a natural casing. It was simple, nutrient-dense, and honest. Today, mass-production corporate food engineering has completely flipped the script. When a massive conglomerate looks at a sausage, they don't see an agricultural product. They see a profit margin optimization problem. The goal becomes a race to the bottom. How little actual muscle tissue can we legally put in this casing while still legally being allowed to print the word pork or beef on the front of the package? To achieve this magic trick, the industry relies on a heavily processed foundation called the filler matrix. Instead of using high-quality shoulder or belly meat, industrial factories use what is affectionately known in the trade as scrap and rind. They take tough pork skin, connective tissues, and highly vascular organ trimmings, and they toss them into a high-speed industrial blender. Because this mixture tastes terrible and looks like an industrial sludge, they have to bulk it out with heavy cereal fillers, usually a highly processed wheat or rice derivative called rusk, alongside that pea starch, corn flour, and potato fiber. These powdered grains act like an edible sponge, waiting for the final, cheapest ingredient of them all, ice-cold water. They pour gallons of frozen water directly into the blending machines, and the starches absorb it, expanding the volume of the meat mixture by massive percentages. Think of it like taking a perfectly good steak, blending it with half a loaf of cheap white bread and a glass of tap water, and then trying to convince someone it's a premium delicacy. But there is a massive physical problem with this method. When you pack a casing full of wet bread and ground-up skin, the final product turns a depressing, sickly shade of concrete gray. Nobody wants to buy a gray sausage. It looks dead, unappetizing, and borderline toxic. To fix this visual nightmare, the corporate chemists step in with color-stabilizing agents and artificial dyes to give the mixture that faux healthy, vibrant pink hue you see glowing under the fluorescent lights of the supermarket meat case. They wrap it in a hyper-glossy plastic tray, slap a label on it featuring words like traditional, butcher's choice, or premium, and watch the cash registers ring. You aren't paying for premium livestock. You are paying premium prices for water and flour that have been cleverly trained to impersonate a farm-fresh breakfast. And the scariest part is that once you trace the corporate money up the chain, you realize that on almost single one of these seemingly independent, friendly backyard brands is actually owned by the exact same handful of multi-billion-dollar global conglomerates that care significantly more about their quarterly board meetings than they do about your digestive health. Let's start descending into the belly of the corporate beast, and we are kicking things off at number 11 with Walmart's Great Value Original Pork Sausage Links. Now, everyone knows Great Value. It is the undisputed king of budget grocery shopping, anchoring the shelves of thousands of Walmart supercenters across the country. People buy it because it's cheap, reliable, and features a clean, simple blue logo that screams corporate efficiency. But if you take a magnifying glass to the back of this package, you will see a recipe that looks more like a high school chemistry project than an actual breakfast. According to testing metrics compiled by consumer transparency groups, these links hover shockingly close to the bare legal minimum for actual meat content, with the rest of the volume bulked out by corn syrup solids, textured soy flour, and potassium lactate. When you throw these into a hot skillet, they don't sizzle beautifully, they sweat. They release a thick, milky residue as the soy protein and water matrix collapses under the heat, leaving you with a shriveled, rubbery stub that tastes vaguely of salt and industrial preservatives. You are essentially paying full price for a sponge soaked in sodium, wrapped in a generic plastic sleeve. A real consumer review on Walmart's own site sums it up perfectly, noting that these taste like spiced cardboard and shrink so much you need to cook the whole pack just to feed 2 people. It is the ultimate illusion of grocery savings, cheap at the register, but an absolute rip-off on the plate. Moving along the aisle to number 10, we find Gwaltney Traditional Pork Sausages, a staple brand you can find stacked high in the refrigerated cases of Kroger and Food Lion. Gwaltney loves to lean hard on its deep Southern heritage, boasting a legacy that stretches back into the 19th century with imagery that makes you think of smoky country kitchens and honest farming traditions. The reality up in the corporate boardroom is completely different. Gwaltney is owned by Smithfield Foods, which in turn is a wholly owned subsidiary of the WH Group, a massive global meat processing conglomerate based in China. That historical Southern charm is a marketing ghost designed to distract you from what the laboratory data actually reveals. Investigations into high-volume budget meats show these products are heavily reliant on mechanically separated pork and added pork fat rather than lean muscle tissue. To prevent this ultra-fatty, blended sludge from looking like a tub of lard, they inject it with sodium erythorbate and a cocktail of texturizers. The sensory experience is exactly what you'd expect from a hyper-processed meat tube. It has a strangely smooth, hot dog-like texture completely devoid of the hearty, coarse grind of a traditional breakfast link. If you drop this into your shopping cart out of pure habit, you are voting for a global supply chain optimization project, not a farmhouse breakfast. It's not a proud culinary tradition, it's an industrial byproduct disguised as nostalgia. If you already feel like running to your fridge right now to check your own shelf, hit that subscribe button, because the numbers are about to get even harsher from here. At number 9, we have a name that is practically synonymous with American mornings, Jimmy Dean Regular Premium Pork Sausage. This is the big one, the brand founded by country music legend Jimmy Dean himself back in 1969. The packaging still projects that warm, wholesome, straight-talking American spirit. But follow the corporate ladder up to the top, and you discover that the brand is tucked away inside the portfolio of Tyson Foods, a multi-billion-dollar industrial meat titan. And when a corporate giant takes over an artisanal recipe, the bean counters immediately go to work. The ingredient list explicitly features water, corn syrup, and monosodium glutamate tucked right behind the pork. Independent food safety reviewers point out that using corn syrup in a raw breakfast sausage is a classic industrial trick to add cheap weight and bind moisture, ensuring the consumer pays meat prices for liquid sugar. When you fry a log of Jimmy Dean, the smell that fills your kitchen is undeniably potent, but the texture has become increasingly soft and pasty over the decades due to the high volume of water-binding fillers. An industry veteran recently noted that modern, mass-market sausage logs are essentially engineered to hold as much liquid suspension as physics will allow. The final verdict is simple. You aren't buying the legendary country singer's personal recipe anymore. You are buying a highly optimized commodity formula wrapped in a famous dead man's signature. That brings us to number 8. Target's Market Pantry Pork Sausage Links. Target has spent the last 2 decades positioning itself as the chic, slightly upscale alternative to big box discount stores, but their budget-tier grocery brand tells a very different story. These fresh links sit on the shelf at an incredibly enticing price point, but they are heavily bulked out with isolated soy product and sodium phosphates. The inclusion of soy isolates is the ultimate corporate loophole. It allows the manufacturer to artificially inflate the total protein percentage on the nutritional facts panel without actually adding a single extra ounce of real livestock muscle tissue. The practical result is a sausage that feels bizarrely spongy when you bite into it, lacking any of the satisfying resistance or snap of a proper casing. You are paying a premium for Target's clean, minimalist packaging while eating a product that is fundamentally engineered to look like meat, while functioning as a cheap vehicle for plant protein and chemically retained moisture. It is a stylish corporate trap wrapped in red and white graphics. Next up at number 7, we have Dollar General's Clover Valley pork sausages. Millions of Americans rely on dollar stores for their weekly groceries due to widening food deserts and tight budgets, and the food industry knows exactly how to exploit this captive market. The Clover Valley line looks like any standard grocery store brand, but the nutritional compromise inside the casing is staggering. Lab evaluations of ultra-budget private label meats frequently highlight high concentrations of sodium diacetate and citric acid used as cheap shelf life extenders to keep the meat from turning gray during long transit times. The taste is overwhelmingly metallic and salty, completely drowning out any natural pork flavor that might have survived the blending process. A prominent food scientist publicly stated that when a product relies this heavily on chemical flavor enhancers and acidifiers, it's usually because the baseline raw materials would be completely unpalatable without them. It is cheap fuel dressed up as food, extracting hard-earned money from families who deserve far better quality for their dollar. Let's transition over to the freezer section for number 6 with Banquet Brown N-Serve Original Sausage Links, a brand you can find in literally every major supermarket from Safeway to Publix. These are incredibly popular for busy parents because they are pre-cooked and take less than 2 minutes in the microwave. But how exactly does a corporation make a sausage that sits in a cardboard box for months and still tastes intensely savory? You do it by packing it with mechanically separated turkey, water, pork, soy protein concentrate, and BHT as a chemical preservative. The fact that turkey is listed before pork in a product most consumers assume is a standard pork link is the first warning sign. When you microwave these, they release a distinctive, greasy sheen and develop a rubbery, skinless exterior that feels completely synthetic in the mouth. A well-known consumer advocacy report flagged these types of hyper-processed frozen links for their sky-high sodium-to-protein ratio, proving that you are essentially paying for salt water and poultry slurry compressed into a link shape. It is convenience food at its most cynical, trading your long-term cardiovascular health for a slightly faster Monday morning routine. At number 5, we have Bob Evans Original Pork Sausage Links. This is another massive national heavyweight that traces its roots back to a real Ohio diner and a real farmer named Bob Evans. Today, the brand is a dominant force across Midwestern and Eastern grocery shelves like Meijer and Wegmans. While the packaging leans heavily into the cozy image of a red barn and rural hospitality, the modern production method is pure heavy industry. The fresh links are packed with BHA, propyl gallate, and citric acid to maintain freshness and artificial color stabilization. Sensory analysts note that the modern iteration of this sausage has a distinctly uniform, homogenized chew that indicates a highly automated emulsification process rather than a traditional grind. When you eat it, the dominant notes are sage and black pepper, which experts argue are deployed in heavy doses specifically to mask the lack of deep, savory flavor in the low-grade base meat itself. It is a masterclass in corporate sensory manipulation, using aggressive seasoning and chemical preservatives to keep a mass-produced product tasting exactly like the ghost of a farmhouse breakfast from 50 years ago. Moving to number 4. We encounter Smithfield Hometown Original Pork Sausage Breakfast Links. Smithfield is the single largest pork producer in the United States, dominating the meat cases of giant chains like H-E-B and Albertsons. Because they control the entire supply chain from the factory farm to the retail shelf, you would think their flagship sausage would be a showcase of top-tier meat. Instead, it is a showcase of industrial efficiency. The ingredients list features a heavy dose of water, sodium phosphates, and flavorings. When independent food laboratories test these large-scale commercial lines, they regularly find that the moisture retention chemicals are dialed up to the maximum legal limit, allowing the company to ship millions of pounds of water disguised as fresh pork. The practical result for you is a link that shrinks dramatically the moment it hits a hot pan, leaving a puddle of white, foamy grease in your skillet while the sausage itself turns tough and dry. It is corporate cutting of corners scaled up to a national level, proving that the biggest name in the industry is often the one giving you the least amount of real food for your money. Now let's look at number 3. Appleton Farms Pork Sausage Links, which you will find sitting in the refrigerated section of your local Aldi. Aldi has earned a massive cult-like following in the United States for offering high-quality European-style grocery standards at rock-bottom prices. But even the darling of budget grocery shopping isn't immune to the systemic tricks of the American meat industry. While Aldi sells some incredible premium products, their entry-level Appleton Farms fresh sausage is a direct copy of the worst corporate formulas in the country. It is loaded with corn syrup solids, tetrasodium pyrophosphate, and heavy amounts of water. The texture is notoriously soft, lacking any distinct structural grain, and the flavor leaves a lingering greasy chemical aftertaste that real consumers frequently complain about on online forums. It is a stark, undeniable reminder that you cannot trust a store's good reputation to protect you. You have to read the back of every individual bag yourself. Because even the most consumer-friendly chains will quietly slip a low-grade filler tube onto the bottom shelf if it helps their bottom line. That brings us to number 2, a premium supermarket tier that catches thousands of well-meaning shoppers off guard: Kroger's Private Selection heritage-style pork sausages. This line is deliberately placed on the higher shelves, wrapped in elegant, dark packaging with sophisticated fonts designed to make you feel like a gourmet chef for buying it. But when you look past the beautiful typography, you find that certain flavored varieties within this premium line drop down significantly in actual pure pork content once you factor in heavy doses of high-sodium cheese blends, artificial smoke flavorings, and chemical stabilizers. Furthermore, the wider corporate manufacturing network behind massive supermarket private labels has faced severe scrutiny in recent years. Major food safety authorities have forced massive processing plants supplying these regional chains to issue urgent product recalls due to physical foreign object contamination, including fragments of hard blue industrial plastic and metal shards entering the high-speed packing lines. When you are paying a premium price for a product with the word selection stamped on the front, you expect unparalleled quality control, not a standardized factory recipe wrapped in a black tuxedo box. It proves that high prices don't buy you an artisan product. They just buy you a better class of marketing. Finally, at number 1, the most trusted, ubiquitous name in the entire American breakfast ecosystem: Oscar Mayer Classic Pork Sausage Links. Owned by the massive Kraft Heinz conglomerate, Oscar Mayer is a cultural icon that has spent generations building absolute trust with American families through catchy jingles and nostalgic commercials. But behind the friendly yellow logo lies a product that represents the absolute peak of industrial food manipulation. These links are packed with water, soy protein concentrate, sodium phosphates, sodium diacetate, and BHA. The sheer volume of non-meat additives inside this package is breathtaking. When you cook them, the structural integrity of the link relies entirely on chemical emulsifiers holding the water and fat together. The sensory experience is a strange, rubbery bounce followed by an overwhelming blast of salt and chemical smoke flavor. A prominent independent food journalist noted that products like this are designed to appeal to the lowest common denominator of taste while maximizing corporate shelf life and profit margins. It is the definitive proof of the great American grocery deception. The brand you trust the absolute most is the one using every single chemical trick in the playbook to sell you a casing full of industrial filler. And now, what it was worth watching all the way through for. We have waded through the murky swamps of corporate fillers, liquid sugars, and synthetic texturizers, so let's shift the energy completely and talk about the actual champions of the grocery aisle. These are the brands that prove you can still walk into a standard American supermarket and buy a product made with real integrity, real livestock, and zero chemical deception. They don't all cost a fortune either. We are going to look at the options that respect both your health and your wallet, ranked from the most widely available budget-friendly lifesavers to the top-tier premium cuts. First up, representing the most accessible and surprisingly honest option on the mainstream shelf, Jones Dairy Farm all-natural little pork sausage links. You can find these sitting proudly in the freezer or refrigerated sections of major regional chains like Kroger, Meijer, and even local independent grocers. Jones Dairy Farm is a massive wake-up call to the rest of the high-volume industrial meat sector. While the corporate giants are busy loading their casings with 6 different types of corn solids and soy binders, Jones has stuck to a legendary family recipe that uses exactly 3 ingredients: pork, salt, and natural spices, packed into a natural lamb casing. That is it. No fillers, no binders, no preservatives, and absolutely zero MSG. When you lay these links into a skillet, the physical difference is immediate. They don't sweat out a cloud of white chemical foam. They brown beautifully in their own natural fats, releasing a clean, rich, traditional pork aroma. The texture has that genuine, historic snap when you bite into it, followed by a hearty, distinctively coarse meat grain. In terms of price analysis, they might cost a fraction more per ounce than a bottom-tier generic store brand, but when you calculate the cost per actual serving of pure protein, the value is staggering because they barely shrink at all in the pan. You are actually eating the weight you paid for, making it the perfect everyday upgrade for families who want to escape the corporate filler trap without blowing their weekly budget. www.festfoods.com. Michaud 3 second on our list of recommendations is Target's Good & Gather Organic Pork Breakfast Sausage. Now, earlier we tore apart Target's budget market pantry line for its heavy reliance on soy isolates. But their upscale Good & Gather Organic line is a complete tonal shift that proves a major retailer can absolutely deliver the good stuff when they want to. This fresh sausage is third-party certified organic, meaning the livestock is raised on a strict non-GMO diet without the routine use of preventative antibiotics. The ingredient list is remarkably clean, avoiding the standard corporate trap of packing the meat with industrial water retention phosphates. In practice, this sausage cooks beautifully, holding its structural shape without swimming in a puddle of gray water, delivering a deeply savory, sage-forward flavor profile that tastes like an authentic butcher shop product. It is a bit more expensive than the standard chemical-laden options on the shelf, usually running about $1 or $2 more per package, but that markup goes entirely toward real agricultural standards and pure meat volume rather than clever laboratory texturizers. It is the ideal mainstream choice for the shopper who wants clean, organic standards with the convenience of a quick Target run, though the only real downside is that popularity means it frequently sells out during peak weekend shopping hours. Third, we have an independent heavyweight that has earned a massive, loyal following among health-conscious shoppers across the country. Applegate Naturals Classic Pork Breakfast Sausage. Available at major chains from Whole Foods and Trader Joe's to mainstream giants like Publix and Safeway, Applegate has built its entire corporate philosophy around humanely raised livestock and radical ingredient transparency. Their classic pork links contain less than 2% of cane sugar, salt, and a simple blend of traditional spices like white pepper, ginger, and sage. They carry an official gluten-free and casein-free certification, making them a bulletproof option for anyone dealing with severe food sensitivities or celiac disease. When independent consumer protection labs run screens on national sausage brands, Applegate consistently ranks at the top for chemical purity, completely free of added nitrates, nitrites, or synthetic preservatives like BHT. When you cook them, they deliver a wonderfully tender, fork-clean bite that is entirely free of the rubbery, synthetic bounce found in hyper-processed brands. Yes, they are positioned at a premium price point, and you get slightly fewer links per box than the corporate mass-market brands, but every single ounce of that product is pure, unadulterated nutrition. You are paying for ethical farming and chemical freedom, which is completely justified if you want to keep your morning routine entirely clean. www.g.org to show 1/4, let's talk about the undisputed gold standard of supermarket premium sausages, the Black Farmer pork sausages. While harder to find in every single corner grocery store, these are increasingly anchoring the premium specialty sections of high-end regional chains and online boutique grocers. Founded by an independent agricultural pioneer, this brand utilizes outdoor-reared pork that focuses entirely on traditional animal welfare standards. The ingredient profile is remarkably sparse and clean, delivering an intensely deep, rich, authentic heritage flavor that makes mass-market commercial links taste like wet paper by comparison. The texture is beautifully rustic and coarse, mimicking exactly what a traditional local butcher would handcraft for you behind the counter. The downside is obvious. It carries a true premium price tag and can be difficult to locate outside of major metropolitan areas. But if you have access to it, and you are planning a special weekend family brunch, this is the definitive bottle of fine wine of the breakfast sausage world, a complete revelation of what real, uncompromised American livestock is supposed to taste like. Finally, at number 5, we return to a masterclass in reading labels right under your nose, Aldi's specially selected premium pork sausages. This is the ultimate proof of the investigation. Sitting literally 3 feet away from the low-grade, chemical-stuffed Appleton Farms line we exposed in Part 2, this specially selected range features an incredibly high, pure pork percentage packed into a natural casing. Food safety investigations covering discount grocery options have repeatedly highlighted this specific line for completely outperforming national name brands that cost twice as much. It features a beautifully balanced blend of traditional seasonings with zero artificial colorings or industrial texturizers. It is the ultimate budget champion because it gives you top-tier butcher shop quality at standard discount grocery prices, proving once and for all that a high price tag doesn't automatically mean better food. It is all about the integrity of the manufacturer and your own willingness to flip the pack over and read the fine print before you buy. So, how do you actually protect your plate the next time you step through the automatic doors of your local grocery store? You don't need a degree in food chemistry to stop being a victim of corporate marketing. You just need to arm yourself with 5 concrete, non-negotiable rules. First, ignore everything printed on the front of the box. Words like family recipe, premium, natural, or stadium style mean absolutely nothing in the eyes of federal labeling regulations. They are purely emotional traps designed by corporate focus groups to make you trust a plastic tray. Second, look at the very first 3 ingredients on the back of the package. If you see water, soy protein isolate, or corn syrup solids listed before or immediately after the primary meat, put the box right back on the shelf because you are paying premium meat prices for liquid weight and plant-based padding. Third, treat artificial color stabilizers like sodium erythorbate or carmine as a massive red flag. If a manufacturer has to use chemical dyes to make their raw breakfast links look pink, it means the baseline meat mixture underneath was a depressing industrial shade of concrete gray before they doctored it up. Fourth, check the sodium to protein ratio on the nutritional facts panel. A high-quality, honest sausage should always have significantly more grams of protein per serving than it does fractions of your daily sodium allowance. If the salt levels are sky-high while the protein is scraping the bottom, you are buying compressed sodium water, not muscle tissue. Fifth, embrace the freezer section over the fresh chilled case if it means getting a cleaner label. Brands like Jones Dairy Farm prove that keeping a product frozen allows them to completely eliminate the need for chemical preservatives like BHA and propyl gallate, which big corporations use to keep fresh links sitting under supermarket lights for weeks on end. www.jonesdairyfarm.com. When you step back and look at the entire landscape of the American supermarket system, the main takeaway becomes blindingly clear. The modern corporate food industry is fundamentally built to sell you the absolute maximum amount of water and grain filler that physics will allow, all wrapped up in a familiar name you remember from childhood commercials. The entire business model relies on your convenience, your haste, and your absolute trust that a massive conglomerate has your family's health in mind. But once you commit to that single simple shift in thinking, once you realize that you are the investigator and the back label is the crime scene, you immediately strip away all the power from these multi-billion-dollar marketing machines. You stop being a passive consumer absorbing whatever low-grade slurry they put on the bottom shelf, and you become an active guardian of your own dinner table. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this deep dive into what is actually hiding inside your grocery cart. If this investigation completely changed the way you look at the breakfast aisle, or if it simply confirmed a suspicion you've had for years every time your skillet filled up with gray water, hit that hype button right now before you walk away. Sharing this video genuinely matters because you almost certainly have a friend or a family member who does the weekly shop for their kids without having any idea they are feeding them chemical binders instead of real protein. Let's start a real conversation down in the comment section tonight. I want to know exactly which of these brands is sitting in your refrigerator or freezer right now, and which consumer product category you want us to turn our investigative lens on next. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we are absolutely not stopping at the breakfast aisle. There are dozens of everyday items sitting on those big box shelves that deserve a brutal, honest look. Until next time, read the small print, buy for the substance instead of the logo, and protect your plate.